My name is Misael, and today we'll be going over the VCAT robots for change-up. So I guess we'll start off with the competition 15. Okay, so this is Valkyrie. Excuse the background, we're in the middle of cleaning, but this is Valkyrie. We'll start off with the intakes. There are two 600 RPM motors, and they are driving the 3-inch VEXU flex wheel. Don't know what hardness this is, but you could probably figure out by the color. And this is 1.5-inch, 2-inch diameter VEXU flex wheel. Also, you can figure out the hardness. I don't know what it is, but this one's harder than this one. 3D printed hubs. This one's like maybe 2 years old, so that's why it's a little beat up. But it does wonders for us. The intakes are made out of several 3D printed parts. They used to be made out of one large part, but when that large part fails, it's really hard to replace it quickly. So during a competition, this would be a lot better. So it's split up into 5 parts. Standoffs here, and you can see over here. Keep these parts sandwiched so that they don't expand and the wheel won't pop out of place. These spacers over here also prevent that. They prevent this side from compressing. Okay, moving on. Motors are quick swap. If you take off the rubber band and the clip, the motor can just come out, and you can either replace the cartridge or the motor if it burned out. The intake mounts are milled. They used to be 3D printed, but they used to break very frequently. The mount lets the intake pivot outwards and up and down. This face is basically a physical stop for the intake when it comes down. There's a piston for the intakes, and this just allows the intakes to open and close. This is nice because I can't program auto well, or at least in the beginning of the year, I used to not program auto well, and I knew I wouldn't make very consistent autos. So this was a way to ease some frustration. And it also helps when picking up balls around the field. The rubber bands are used for compression, as the internal spring on the single action piston does not provide enough compression on the balls. It's connected via a linkage because we wanted its default state to be closed at the start of the match, because I didn't want to change anything in the pre-ops on or anything like that. I just want it to be more mechanically complex to make the software more simple, even though it really isn't that more complicated. But it is what it is. It is mounted on half cuts, 2 half cuts. They are 3 holes wide, long. I mean, and the half cuts are connected via standoffs, and that prevents the two from not being parallel with each other. Oh, they'll be parallel with each other, but they'll prevent it from shifting. That was a weird motion I did with my hand. But the holes in here are tapped with a tap and die set that we have over here. And they're connected to the conveyor uprights. If you can see over there, those nuts right there on the inside, behind those have spacers, and they're cut so that they fit exactly within the conveyor uprights in the C channel. Prevents the intakes from leaning forward or backwards too much, especially since we don't have that much of a clearance from the Omni wheel to the intake. One of the rubber bands, it's mounted. The pistons are mounted onto 3-wide, and they are on zip ties because it would have been a pain to try to make a part to go over this and fit within 15. So because of this, the fact that it's mounted on the hole right here, this is pushed in, makes the piston not parallel with this C channel. It's actually slightly in on the end. So that's why this piston stop, the physical stop, is an L shape, so that this actually hits like around halfway over here. If it didn't have this little excess nub over here, it would go over to the side over here and it'd get stuck, which just happened during testing a lot. That's really about it for the intakes, other than the fact that the front wheel is driven 1-to-1 with the motor, and the rear wheel is driven 2-to-1. And it's on 600 RPM. So, moving on to the drivetrain. It's pretty easy. It's a tank configured drivetrain. Like I said, it's easy. 3 motors, 1-to-1, driven together into this one shaft, going into this Omni wheel, 36th gears. Very nice. 200 RPM motors. So they drive this Omni wheel in the back. The front wheel is driven via a chain This way, the turning is more about center rotation, which is about like right here. The inertial sensor is right here, by the way. So that's actually quite a far distance. But I didn't really have an issue with that. Inside here are spacers that are printed. I don't know if you can see it, but it's mounted onto the sprocket in the back, and that's just so that there isn't slot between the sprocket and the wheel, and same on the front, but it's kind of hard to show. They're all on quick stop, by the way. This aluminum bar, it looks like a U shape. That aluminum bar is milled. It's only mounted on these two bolts. They could have mounted on more, but I didn't feel like putting them on before Worlds. That's really it for the drivetrain. It's really super simple. Moving on to the conveyor. Conveyor is driven by two motors. This top motor and this bottom motor, also running at 600 RPM. This motor is down here because if it were here, the intake would end up hitting it at some point, or at least when we first started it. Yeah, it can't be there. So the chain drives up to from here onto the C-channel uprights, but then it has to drive these. The way it does that is by having the chain loop in like a heart. So it goes here, over here, down, inside, out, and back up. So that's actually not that much friction. Haven't really had an issue with it. And it doesn't clip the ball when it's intaking. So all rollers spin at 600 RPM, except for the top one. The top one spins at 1200 with the 2-to-1 ratio with the high strength sprockets. The reason why that is because it gives it slightly more arc when scoring into a goal, and it makes scoring a lot quicker, actually. These conveyors are here. Wow. These rubber bands are here for when the robot folds. It can fold back up. This rubber band here is when it folds, so it doesn't get stuck on here. It just keeps the rubber band in, which is nice. Most of these parts were created to reduce the overall amount of parts that were on the robot to begin with. Like this part used to replace standoffs that had belly bearings and other extra stuff that required a lot of maintenance if you didn't have Loctite on them. This one was only made to make maintenance easier. This white part is a conveyor guard, which was milled out of HDPE, which protects the conveyor when we slam into goals and want to score immediately. These are our wedges. These were made like about a week before Worlds. They kind of get rid of the use of the conveyor guards, but I should say the purpose of the conveyor guards, but we didn't replace them, mainly because they actually kind of look nice. But also, if the wedges break, we still have the conveyor guard to rely on. The air tanks are placed at the bottom. This way all the weight is down low, which makes it nice for tuning the robot. It doesn't have to slow down as much, nor for it to be stable. The air tanks feed into one hose. It goes into this valve, which feeds in onto these pistons, single action pistons. We used to have another pneumatic hatch. Well, not another pneumatic hatch. We used to have a pneumatic hatch here in the rear, but we had to remove it because it was providing no use and it was making our lives more complicated. So that was replaced. We used to have it for the Vexman and the Robot Revolution scrim. Never used it once. The brain's back here. Never took off the protective sheet on the inside because it didn't really need it. I didn't really need to remove it. Rubber bands over here help the hood fold up, so when this folds down and this folds down, it shoots the ball into the goal, which makes my programming life a little bit easier. The radio's back here. 3 distance sensors. Oh, that's 1. 2 and 3 right there. They see inside the conveyor and they control where the balls are. Right. Okay. Now this piece of Lexan right here is mounted onto here, because if this weren't here, this distance sensor would see an infinite distance, and to that, and for the distance sensor, that means a distance of 0. I'm not too sure why that is, but this prevents that and allows our code to work without having to go around that weird little feature, you could call it. License plate right here, right on the inside. I'll keep that off. I guess now I can show you a demo of it working. Actually, before that, this roller has been not really cut, but it has a chamfer on it. This is because the ball used to get stuck on the inside over here, and that's the same with both robots. But yeah, I guess I'll show you a demo of it working now. For robot, we have a auto selection screen, which lets us pick an auto, select. What you saw there in lettering was the actual auto, the description of it, and there's our logo. It's a driver control, so this is an IR sensor. When there's something in the way of it, it sends a value of 1 to the robot, and part of our, I guess, indexing algorithm, it brings the ball up. Now, if you put a ball over here, it's going to want to eat it, or I guess feed it up. The great part of having a split conveyor is that when you feed another ball in, it's only the bottom roller that spins. And that's just really nice, especially if we bring the rollers down, it just brings it up automatically. And when this ball goes, that one comes back up. So it makes our lives very, very easy. Driving right, left, and the other sticks forward and backwards. Conveyors go up, conveyor down. The intakes are open when driving around. The top left button closes it and runs the intake in. The bottom one closes it and runs the intakes out. Pressing them both just closes it. So that's really nice. That's about it for Valkyrie. Pegasus is the same thing, also known as this one. Pegasus is the same thing, just that its drivetrain is printed out of PLA. Excuse the lack of everything. It wasn't prepared, but this one, it's the same thing as this. This hood was actually the competition robot's hood, but it broke the day before the tournament. So the skills hood was placed onto the competition hood for the comp, which was why the ball missed the goal when it deployed, but you win some, you lose some. It's the same thing, but the drivetrain is printed out of PLA. This is because the green inserts for the gears are actually smoother than using a bearing flat. So this thing, even though it's the exact same thing, exact same gear ratio, it spins much faster, and it drives quicker. So that is nice. But other than that, it's the exact same thing. Everything is built the exact same way. So this is also a backup robot, or was a backup robot for us, and we had strategies that involve the backup robot and the comp robot, or the backup robot and the tethers. Move on to the robot that everyone's looking forward to. I want to point out that we had backup strategies in case if the tether did fail. We had a strategy where the skills robot would become a 24, and it had its own autos too. Okay, so let's move on to the tethers. So here is, I believe, Des and Troy. Together they destroy. I didn't name it, but they are they're what they are. So these are Tetherbots. The drivetrain is 12 inches by 12 inches. This outer plate, wow, I blanked out. This outer plate has the green inserts, and it reduces the friction on the drivetrain, much like how it did for Pegasus over there. So drivetrain uses 3.25 inch Omni wheels on the front and back, left and right. And uses VEXU Pro chain. I forgot what the gear ratio is on this, mainly because I didn't build this robot. But I know that the one bot is slightly quicker than Valkyrie, and that's just that. So it's 4 motor, 200 RPM, and yeah. All I know is that this side has more teeth than this one. I'm assuming 22 to 18 teeth. I could be wrong, but I digress. The intakes also pivot on this one, but the piston's on the inside. I couldn't do this on Valkyrie because of reasons. I forget why. But these are the intakes for the tethers. They are pneumatically actuated with, I believe, milled hinges. Yeah, so milled hinges right there. hinges are milled, and this is an old piece from the Pterodactyl robot that was cut down, and that's a physical stop. The motors are also quick swap. I don't know what the gear ratio is from the rear to the other wheels, but we use 3-inch VEXU flex wheel for the intakes. Each robot has 7 motors, by the way. Again, another infrared sensor here at the bottom and here at the top. The top one is to see if there's a ball up here, to see whether or not the conveyor can keep rolling, since it's only powered by one motor. And this one detects if there's a ball in the intake to auto roll or not. These are some license plate holders. This is a conveyor guard for this conveyor. It's the similar setup to Valkyrie's. All rollers spin at 600 RPM except for the top one. The top one's at 1200 RPM. The reason why this sprocket's so large is because it's a lot easier to transfer the torque on the bigger sprocket. And there's this tensioner right there. So this is the robot that has the brain on it. Here's the brain, and the battery fits right next to it, right there. There's a hole here, so we can quickly access the power button. And this is right here, so that the battery doesn't become unplugged or anything. These are anti-tips because it has a very small footprint forward and backwards. No anti-tips in the front because this half cut, I think it's a half cut. Yeah, this half cut is too low to the ground to even tip. I think that's about it on this robot. It's really simple, extremely simple. Right, so very simple system. And now Troy is the exact same thing. Oh, my bad, Des. This is Troy. Des is the exact same thing, but in black. And this is the side that has all the air tanks. So all the wires feed into this tubing, which is a snakeskin that we got from Amazon. It's not actual snakeskin, but it did a shop. But all the wires are in here. It's very malleable. It's extremely easy to go over the tether with Valkyrie or Pegasus. Valkyrie and Pegasus, they just go over it. These bots are actually slightly unstable, but that's okay because that actually let us go over, I think, Easy 3's tether and our tether. So that's very lovely. But other than that, that's basically it. This is also quick swap. The drivetrain motors are not quick swap though. Very happy that these did not burn out during a match or anything. I don't think there's much else to point out from these bots other than the fact that they are amazing. Also, these pistons are all supposed to be banded just like how they are on Valkyrie and Pegasus, but they were removed for shipping reasons, but that's also there to help close it. Oh, so this hinge is actually messed up. I'm not too sure why, but it didn't give us any issues at the competition, I believe. So this is a... I'm not even going to try to explain that. Nope. Okay. So this plate's here to prevent this 3-wide upright from collapsing forward and backwards. As this literally holds the entire conveyor system. The entire conveyor system is being held in by 4 standoffs. 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the back over there. There's nothing else holding it up, as you can see. We have a really amazing sticker, and we have our sponsors logo on the back as well. Cable management used to be nicer, but time changes, or time moves on, I guess. Oh, right. So something that's pretty interesting about these bots is that the other side, this one has a box seat channel for its middle crossbar. The reason why is because if it's not boxed, the tether actually gets caught underneath here and we're immobilized, especially since we have very, very small wheels. These small wheels are just here so we can have a better acceleration. But because these are boxed, you can't go over the tether at all. And that's why these anti-tips are so close to the wheel, so that it doesn't give a gap for a tether to get caught on. But other than that, it's extremely simple. That was the aim of the game, to get these to be very, very simple. This one, however, does not have the box C channel. It actually has a plate. Now, we could have gone with some weight. What's that word? Weight minimizing for the plate. But we didn't do that because we just didn't need to. The reason why this is a plate is because the weight of the battery in the brain is less than, I think, 2 air tanks, less than 2 air tanks. So it's less than 2 air tanks. So it makes this bot prone to getting caught on the tether a lot more frequently. So this plate just reduced it getting caught here. During practice matches, this bot would get stuck constantly, and so that was a fix, because that happened during I think the backspan scrim, and it just was not great. But yeah, boxed standoffs are boxed, also boxed, and box right there. So the box up here, but you can't see it because of this bracket. Actually, you can. There's the box. The anti-slip was redone. I think like 2 days before Worlds. So pretty cool. That's really about it with these robots. They're extremely simple and very robust. These are handles, so we can lift them up from here. These standoffs, they stick out. They stick out the robot because that's where the tether lies on top of when auto begins. And then when the tether shove away, the tether just falls down. So that is very lovely. So each tether has its own inertial sensor. Let's see if I can find out. Let's see if I can show you where it is. It should be somewhere in there. I think this one's easier to show you in. No, actually, let me show it to you on the other side. So here's the inertial sensor right here. It's the same spot over here on the plate. So they each have their own inertial sensor, and they're used for turning. These actually don't use any PID at all. They're just strictly based on encoder values. Once it gets to a certain distance, it just stops, which we didn't have any problems with. Our autos were consistent. The radio's right here, not that low to the ground, but still pretty close. It didn't give us any issues for disconnecting and whatnot. One issue that we did have was that we had I think a solid core 3-wire from the old tether from, I believe it was Starstruck, Atlas and Calypso. We used their wire and it would break in many places, and so our sensors or our pistons on this robot, this is the puppet, on this robot would just stop functioning out of nowhere. But we fixed that. We got some, I think it was like 10-foot 3-wire from RoboSource, and that fixed all of our issues. And I believe that is all for the Tetherbots. Yep, so I'll just do a little walk around real quick. The tether's actually like, I think 8.5 feet from here to here, which lets us cover, I think, from this goal to anywhere, from that middle goal to the center goal, or this middle goal. Again, excuse the mess. We're in the middle of cleaning. You're preparing for the next game. But the idea was that we shouldn't make the tether so long, because if we do, it can make a wall for an opposing team, especially if they're pretty derpy at driving. So we made it pretty short so that teams wouldn't get caught on it, and we wouldn't get a call for anything. That is about it. To conclude, the tethers, we decided we wanted to make these since, think about July, so almost a year now. We wanted to make tethers. I had an idea for a 15-inch tether, but that was completely not a good idea. So me and the guy who built this, his name is Tim Tulio, by the way. If you want to hire him. He just graduated. He designed these. Both me and him both designed a separate Tetherbot, but then we eventually led up to these tethers. 15s were created in September when we first got clearance to be in our room again. So this one came first. Then about, I want to say after our own event, actually, we made this one in hopes that this would be a lot quicker. This one used to drive at 600 RPM for the drivetrain, in the hopes that this would be a lot quicker than this one. But turns out this one didn't have enough torque to turn the robot, and that's what we got for the West Virginia event. So this one was switched back to 200 RPM to have the torque again. And here we are with a almost great skill score. This robot has hit, I believe, 122 programming score. It was programmed to do 123 because I didn't have time to redevelop a code for 126. And I was also learning PID this year, so that was also another hardship to face. A question that was on the Instagram was why the intakes are so chunky. I'm assuming you mean chunky. They're really thick so that they don't break. That's really what we got for you. They're really thick so that they don't break at all. I remember when we were at the VEXU scrim, this part had broken and we had no replacement, so we had to do a zip tie and rubber band, and that's what held the bottom part of this. But that is that. Same with these. These used to be pretty thick. Actually, I think there's some goods over here that I could show you. So excuse this pile. This right here is the old pneumatic hatch we used to have on the rear of the bots. This is one of the old intake parts for Valkyrie and Pegasus. It was one component. This one's actually fine. But if this part would break, it's replace everything that's mounted onto this. Some old intakes over here for old robots. And then this tube thing was an early concept which failed miserably, which I expected, but it was just an idea for the 15. This right here is actually the old hood that we used to have. It used to be very floppy. The chain on the back is it's kind of like a spine. It prevented the hood from folding forward too much, and it was kept tension using a rubber band. Looking back on it now, is probably the worst idea to ever make. But it was pretty cool while it lasted. It used to be like a slingshot for the goals. It would slingshot ball straight into the goals. These zip ties were kept because it's a pretty cool mohawk. What else is over here? This hook, we try to copy off of ABS because it's a pretty good idea, especially since I didn't have a really good auto for skills. The hook for the center goal goes in, pushes the ball out, and takes one out as well. This used to be the skirt for the 15. Wow, this is old. It used to be the skirt for the 15 on the back to protect the motors, but that was replaced because there's just something else to worry about. That over there is a practice bot that we made in like the last few, I'd say last 2 months before Worlds, because we didn't have another team to scrimmage against. We had that bot and the skills bot become a team, and we used to 1v1 those. That bot was like later scrapped like 2 days before Worlds for its parts, so we could have them ready, which we never had to use. We never had to use extra parts. These are some old wedges that we never ended up using. A few benchies. The benchies are for our Ender 3 Pros. Or not 3, 2. 2 Ender 3 Pros. These work nicely. Our parts came from this, and they all work well. Like, it's good enough for us. This is on a glass bed with a PEI sheet on top. Excuse the interruption. My phone ran out of memory, so I had to quickly move files. But here we have our Ultimaker, which we also use to print. But this we didn't use to print any of the stuff on the robot. We just used this to print stuff for the printers or anything else that the room required. Mainly because we got this working maybe a month before the World Championship. Is there anything else I want to go over? Oh, right, code-wise. These did not use odometry, mainly because it couldn't get an odometry code functioning because it couldn't get PID to work to begin with. But eventually it got to work maybe a week before Worlds, and here we are with these. Use that interruption again. So no odometry on these robots because they Well, I couldn't figure out PAD until about week before the World Championship. So that's where we're at. However, they do have a path correction class that works based on the fact that two separate movements, if it drives forward, turns, and then moves a different direction, the endpoints of those movements are going to be the same. So that's the resultant. And if you know the resultant, you can always correct your positioning as long as you know your heading. So that's really good when you're crashing into a goal. You back away from it. You might be slightly off from where you were before, but your robot will correct for it. So that was very nice for these. These don't have it because they just didn't need it. And also, there was so much slop, or there still is a lot of slop between the wheels before this turns. Like, I'll hold this in place. It's about that much in slop. So positioning, you can't really get an accurate positioning with this unless you use geometry wheels or geometry pods, but we don't have space for that on this other bot. Fun fact, everything on these robots were at some point made out of C-channel. And then afterwards, they're 3D printed, or at least VEX components. So you can make a fully functional VEXU robot using C-channels or any other structure that VEX sells, and you'll probably be really competitive, such as BLRS and IFT, or you can go the route of customizing things with 3D parts. And yeah, you go 3D printing, milling. We have not touched laser cutting yet, but hopefully you can touch that later on this coming season. That is all. If you have any questions, you can ask them in the comments, and I'll try my best to answer them. Thank you for watching.